And welcome back to the CODESHO podcast. We got Matt as usual, and we brought Patrick on today. We're going to get a little bit into who Patrick is and our history with him. But for the last few episodes, we've been talking a lot about, what junior developers should do, what any developer should do, how to transition from here to here. But this time we kind of want to have like a real person on the podcast.
It's our first guest too.
It's our first guest, which is really exciting. Yeah. We're super dorks over here. But we're going to continue to do a little bit more of that. I know that we've been talking about this a lot on the podcast, wanting to have other developers on. So instead of us just preaching at each other, we've got real people with real history.
And get some other opinions,
Yeah. So I guess as a little bit of background, just say who you are, where you're from, how you know me, how you know Matt, and we can kind of go from there.
All right. My name is Patrick, as Cole said. I'm originally from Rwanda.
I couldn't tell. There was like hardly any accent or anything.
Yeah. I've been living here for about almost 7 years. So I met you at my first job in the U.S. Well, my second job in the U.S. And I met Matt at our current company.
the current place we work. Yeah.
So me and another guy that is crazy. We kind of the trio, us three, kind of followed each other from the last company to the new one. But another guy that we work with at our current job, me and him interviewed Patrick and ended up hiring him. And a funny story there was like we hired. I don't even know if I've told you this. Maybe I have. We were interviewing just relentlessly for like a week, and so like the role was like, okay, we want to, no offense, we want to pay somebody not that much. Like it was like what was it? Do you remember the pay?
I was like around like $12, I think.
Yeah, it was like $12 an hour. And
what was the role?
He just said the owner was saying we just want somebody to test, and like
Okay.
and it'd be cool to have somebody, maybe a college student with a programming background. And me and the other guy, his name's Simon. Actually, at some point we'll probably bring him on.
Yeah.
We were like, it's going to be really hard to find somebody that's worth anything at that pay. He was just like, that's it. That's what you guys got. Okay, fine. So we're interviewing, and of course, we're not attracting any real talent because it's $12 an hour.
$12 an hour, yeah.
And so we just like, I told Simon after like the 40-second interview, I was like, dude, this is brutal. Like, we just got to tell him we're not going to find anybody. This is terrible. Like, everybody that were coming in, we're asking like, like, what's your history in programming or whatever? And they're like, well, it's my first semester at CSN. I haven't even started the programming courses yet, but like, I really like it. Like, I'm really excited, but it's just like, kill me now. So I tell Simon, like, all right, dude, I'm done. Like, I'm going to just go tell the owner, like, we're not going to get anywhere with this. And then he's like, all right, dude, just give me one more chance. We got one more guy coming in. I've looked at his resume. It looks cool, whatever. And like, I look at Patrick's resume and I was like, dude, come on, like, let's end it, like, let's cut it off. This is just such a waste of time, like, whatever. And then he came in and we start asking him questions, and he's like talking about real programming and like his experience with it, and we were just like, oh my god, thank God, finally we found somebody. So we ended up bringing him on, and I don't know, like, since then you've obviously, well, that was a QA position, right? So since then you've expressed an interest in programming, and it's been my utter goal to get you there. Like, I really want to get this guy, which is actually really crazy, because one thing I want to talk about is that you're about to start finally. Like, this is a crazy time to have you on the podcast because you're going to start doing iOS development next week.
Yep. I'm super excited for that. Dude, it's been a long road.
When was that first job? Was it 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
3 or 4 years ago, right? 3 years ago?
About 3 years ago, yeah.
And then before that, you went to college.
Yeah, I went to college. That's how I actually found the job offer, like from the job board at the
job
college.
board there.
Oh, yeah, I think we did. Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. Targeting college. Why did you want people with a programming background for QA? It's super useful. Like,
it's not that we wanted somebody with a programming background. It's that you can't really, like, there's no QA program at the college. So if you want a junior QA engineer, like, where are you going to look? Who are you going to hire? So it was kind of one of those things.
Not the cooking. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and we were just like, let's give somebody an opportunity that's already interested in programming. So we just go throw something up on the bulletin and hope to attract somebody that wants to at least have a job in the programming world.
Okay.
Because we talk about this all the time, right? It's like, if you want to be a programmer, you're junior. The problem is, where do you start?
Yeah.
A QA position is a great position because almost anybody could make use of a $12 an hour manual QA guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then you can kind of segue as much as you want. And if you're somebody like Patrick, I mean, I've seen a lot of people do this, and they just have no passion or desire in the end. They just kind of get burned out. They just do what they're there to do. But this guy for the last 3 years has literally just been programming nonstop, coming in 3 hours before work.
Tell us a little bit about that. I'm curious what you were thinking during that first job interview.
Yeah. We haven't really talked about that too much because now we've become good friends. But like back then, it was very much like I'm hiring you.
Well, the question is weird in a way.
Okay.
For example, like the other guy we were talking about, I can never forget this question. He asked me like, so at that time I had like a Samsung S3 I was using. It was a super old phone.
Yeah.
And then he was like, okay, so, which devices do you use? And I was like, I have a Samsung S3. He was like, what? It was in an interview, so that was weird. And then he asked me if I report bugs that I find in the apps on my phone.
I remember that. Yeah.
So I was like, no, really. I mean,
Because they're not paying me.
yeah, like if
If they paid me $12 an hour, I'd report.
if they have that report pop-up thing, then I might click report. But
Yeah.
like I don't go out of my way to report it back.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing was that I knew this was a tech company, and I was in school for programming, so I knew this was gonna be a good way for me to enter the tech world. Before that, I was looking for internship for actually even at that time, if I had found like a free internship, I would have taken it. So I did it.
We talk about that. Why?
Yeah.
Why do you think that would have been better?
Because the experience is better than actually making the money. I was in college. I mean, the money would have been good.
Yeah.
But
So you were pretty excited to get something that was willing to pay.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But he's still saying that if he could have done a free internship for programming, he would have taken it.
Yeah.
We talk about that as well.
Yeah,
For example, if you guys said, okay, let's give you an internship, but we're not gonna pay you, I would have like, yes.
It's a good thing you didn't say that because the guy we used to work for would have not paid you. God.
Because like first of all, when you get an internship, you are with other devs.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest thing. Like I've been like trying to join the dev field for like 4 or 5 years now, right? And the reason why, like the biggest reason why I'm able to do it right now is not because I'm coding or I know how to code. It's because of the contact, like you guys.
Yeah.
And also when like I have people to ask questions, right?
Yeah.
Like I send you like a message at like 6 a.m. right? And if you're awake, you reply right away.
I'm usually awake at that time, so.
And you're probably pretty excited about it.
Oh yeah, we've like hopped on Zoom chats. Like I remember you were working on like a Corona app at one point, and yeah, it was just like early in the morning, 7 a.m. We just hopped on and we're doing some debugging.
And that's the thing you can't get with money. Like if you had to pay someone to be available at 7 a.m. to answer your questions, that would be a lot of money. Right?
Oh yeah.
So
what's crazy about that is actually when I was in college, really trying to get stuff figured. Even when I worked at partially whenever I was at that job, like at the very, very beginning, because they had me working on some technologies that I wasn't familiar with. And I actually did pay people on like Code Mentor, I think, and they're like $50 an hour, and it's brutal because you're just like, I don't know this technology, but I also don't have a contact. Yeah. So that's super helpful as you grow and as you meet more people. Oh, that guy knows that thing, that guy knows that thing. But man, if you do, like you said, if you have to pay somebody, it's really expensive.
Yeah. Especially for me, I didn't have anyone who have been coding. Like I have.
Well, you didn't know, but I've been calculating out all those 7 a.m. calls. So
Yeah.
like I'm gonna send you the bill.
Yeah.
Send me a bill. Yeah. So the biggest thing for me was to first get in and then actually meet people that can help me. That's why I was like also trying to attend like meetups and stuff like that. But the thing with meetups though is usually someone like presenting stuff, and it's like it's not easy to actually find someone who can be committed to helping you.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. My biggest thing was to find to be in the dev world, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I want to get your opinion on this. I remember, because I've obviously been trying to push you into the iOS world, which is actually what you're about to start doing, which I'm super pumped about, because that's what I'm super passionate about.
Yeah.
But you had your mind, we've talked about this before, you had your mindset on JavaScript. That's what you really wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So what made you say, like, okay, I'm willing to take that leap of faith. I'm willing to trust, in this case, this guy, me. He says that I should learn this thing, but you really didn't want to at first. So, like, what made you want to take that leap?
So I think there are about three things, right? So, first of all, when we met, when you guys heard me, I didn't even know JavaScript. I didn't know JavaScript exists. Like I
you had written
no
like
idea.
what, Python, right? I
Yeah,
think?
it was like Python, Java, C Sharp, C.
This is all in college.
Yeah.
Like, is it the same one that you went to?
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about this before, where I was saying we had a debate on like whether or not you should go to college. His college was super specialized. It was for gaming. It made a lot of sense for them. But I was telling him the college that we went to is, in my opinion, just terrible because they make you learn like 5 languages and you never get good at any of them.
Dude, to be honest with you, I feel like they stole my money.
Dude, yeah, see? I'm so glad he said that because that's exactly how I feel.
And for me, it was also like shitty because can you say shitty?
Well, you just did twice.
You just did twice, so.
Guess we'll figure it out.
Anyway, so I was paying as an international student. So it was like,
even more expensive,
yeah,
right?
I was paying like 5,500 somewhere like that every semester.
That is crazy because my tuition as an in-state student was like $1,000 a semester. It was crazy.
So
Was
you
super
paid,
cheap. Or maybe like $1,500.
I paid, I forget what. It was like $7,500, so $7,500 per semester at my expensive school. So as an international student, you paid almost as much as me for a much worse degree, possibly.
Yeah, effectively a community college.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not technically, but it's a community college.
Okay.
Yeah, they basically like triple like what number of people pay.
Wow.
It's like, well, not number of people, like citizen people. I don't know.
So what I still want your answer to the question, but what did you take away from college? Like, would you say there's any upsides? Is there any benefits? Is there
That job board was pretty nice.
that's a good point. That's a good
that's
point.
one thing. I also have some friends that, we used to hang out and code and stuff like that. So that was good. Another thing I got from them that I probably wouldn't have learned until probably maybe now is SQL. So
Okay.
I was forced to learn it. So I learned it. And it's useful now, even in my keyway.
Yeah,
It's super
true.
useful.
Yeah.
And it's also useful to understand like backend stuff and things like that. So that was good. But as far as programming goes, I would say I had one class that was super good. So it helped me understand like object-oriented programming and stuff like that. But as far as like the normal stuff like loops, if conditions and stuff like that, I actually learned all those things before I went to college. So I knew I wanted to be a programmer, but I didn't know where to start. So I Googled and I found a C programming website. So I started there. And that's what I learned until to the point of pointers in C.
Mm-hmm.
And those were super hard to get.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anyone to ask. So I got stuck on there. And then by that time, that's when I was going to college. Like that's when I was starting college. So most of the stuff goes like, like the first year is like if conditions, loops, how to declare a variable. Like, yeah, those it was a brutal year.
Yeah.
And what I used to do was like, if I know I'm gonna learn C# next semester, I would learn that in holidays.
Yeah.
We talked about that. That's exactly what I did. That guy, what's the guy that we both like?
His name
Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin. Yeah.
I failed his class. I may have told you this, but I failed his class one semester, and I took a semester off. Like it took me like 3 years to finish because I failed one semester. I took an entire semester off. I failed like 2 classes actually, and I was like, you know what? For an entire semester, I'm gonna prove myself right because I said like this is terrible. College isn't for me. I don't learn well here. So I went on Udemy and I took like a ton of courses, and I came back and just demolished all of my classes, got like straight A's. And Kevin was like, dude, what happened? Like, how did you?
I studied from somebody else.
Yeah, I studied from, which sucks because that guy was a really good professor, but like, I just, that way of learning, like books is, actually my wife right now is doing nursing school, and it's the same kind of lectures, same kind of learning style. She is amazing at it. Like, she'll hand me this like workbook or whatever, and she has all this stuff highlighted, like all these nursing terms, like pharmacokinetics and da da da, and like I'll be reading them to her, and she'll just be like, "Oh yeah, that's a da 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 with that goes nasally in the respiratory." And she's like, "Oh my god, like there's no way I could have done that." And that's exactly how we learned in college, and that style just does not work for me.
I think I'm good at learning like that.
You're a researcher.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll read a book. Like when I was learning Korean, it's kind of like similar to what you were saying. I knew that we were whatever. Like I used to do one-on-one lessons as well in Korean, and I knew what chapter we were doing, so I would go and read the chapter, and I would do all of the workbook, and I would have my list of questions, and then my teacher she got used to it eventually, but we'd sit down at the coffee shop, and it's like 100% in Korean, but she'd be like, okay, like chapter 2, and I go, yeah, I've read it. Like here's my question. So it was just like it was self-study, and I was just because like. It's similar to what you were talking about. I don't want to waste my money. Like I'm paying this teacher. Like, why would I pay her to read me this book where I could read on my own? I want to get to the meat, the stuff that I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I liked about Kevin. He didn't really talk, like he didn't teach the book. So the way he would do it was, okay, tomorrow we study this chapter, right? So he will give you homework, exercise, and all that stuff on that chapter
that you're going to do.
Yeah. And then on that day you submit your homework and all that stuff before you actually learn the chapter. And then when you come in, he'll be like, okay, which questions do you have?
What was difficult? Yeah. That was the thing, is one time I was reading this, it was like an advanced math book, like computer programming math book. This was while I was a teacher, and I was just thinking, man, I just want to get together. Like, this stuff is so useful for my students. I want to get together with them and just discuss it chapter by chapter. And I was like, I just reinvented school. That's stupid.
That's a great idea.
But it would have been. I could just imagine, because even as I was reading it, I have some insights because I knew that stuff before. I'm just rereading it, and I was like, this is such good information. But yeah, like I can understand that not everybody wants to learn that way. But I do think that would be. I used to tell that to my students. I go, I already know all this. I don't need to come in here and shout this stuff on the board. It's better if you come in prepared
with questions.
Then it, like, you'll actually benefit a whole lot more. It's more difficult and maybe not for everybody, and that's fine, I guess. But
yeah, that was really good for me, and also it made me actually take time to study, because the other stuff, to be honest, didn't like sit down and study, because I knew it was gonna be a question, a homework question about finding the prime number or whatever. It's like
everything's prime.
I've been doing this in different classes, so like I can just literally copy the logic from the class I took last semester and put it here.
Yeah.
So
that seems like a waste of money. Like at DigiPen, every course was like, for the first 2.5 years, everything was laid out for you. Like all the classes that you're going to take, they're all prereqs for the next one. So you didn't repeat, or like the beginning of class 3 might be an overlap of the end of class 2, but like it wasn't a bunch of repeated stuff.
So, they didn't repeat the concept of programming, but they did repeat like the exercises and stuff like that. So you'll be, maybe it'll be like, maybe in the first class they tell you to find I don't know, row pairs or whatever. Like find I don't know, like a simple, like find loop years in this range of years, right? And then in the next class, we'll be like, find loop years that are not, that are like, I don't know, that are before 2000.
Oh, okay.
Like,
I see.
It'll be like,
like that,
they add a little bit to change the exercise, but it would be basically the same thing.
Okay.
And it was like, even thinking about sitting down and repeating the same thing I've been doing for like the last year was so daunting. So
I just hated more than anything the vocabulary part of that. It is so bad because
Explain. I don't know what you mean. I mean, I know that there's obviously programming vocabulary, but like you had to like study keywords or whatever.
yeah, like any other class, whether it's high school or college, like, they'll give you vocabulary and you're supposed to like memorize like this definition of recursion or something. And I always thought that was so stupid because like you have to know recursion to know recursion.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like you have to know, like you can't like see this definition that says like recursion, a function that calls itself, or like whatever, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like that's not going to make any sense to you. Like what in the world does that mean? Like I need to actually. So memorizing all of that and then having that on an exam, that's stupid.
That's
I don't know if did you have to deal with that?
I don't remember. Maybe it was probably like multiple choice and stuff like that.
Seems like that was more in the beginning, but still, like that was that just goes back to the whole, like, to me, that style of learning doesn't work for programming.
Well, the problem,
any engineering.
The problem with that is, if you know how to program, if you teach programming, then the definitions will follow.
Yeah. Yes,
like
exactly.
Like I used to like I never told students what a struct was. I mean, I did, right? We would here's a struct in C, and then like test time, I didn't have questions like what's a struct. I would, but like I might have a question like I forget what, like do this thing with like using a struct.
Yeah.
And then like sometimes a student would go, well, like what's a struct? And I go, oh no, I can't answer that. Like that's I'm not going to answer that during the test. Like
anytime anybody's ever asked me in Swift, like, what's the difference between a struct and a class? Let me show you. Like, let me show you like, I can't like, one's a data type and one's a reference type. Like, okay, that doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine if you had to like explain the definition of like a generic. Yeah. It's like, it's stupid. It's like, this is a terrible way to learn. Like, I need to show you what this does.
Yeah, exactly.
I did have a class though that would penalize vocabularies in programming. So we were
like in what way?
Yeah, what do you mean?
In comments. So we were forced to use comments on every.
We talked about
every line, every function, even if it's like val a, be like declaring a variable, and then it'd be like.
Well, that's a poor comment, and the teacher should like.
Exactly.
I mean, the teacher first of all, you shouldn't have a variable named A. But then second of all, if you're going to force them to have a comment, like the comment shouldn't be like that, declaring A. It should be like, here's what I'm using it for. And if it's named correctly, you don't need that anyway. Right?
Yeah. So the thing, I mean, I did talk about this with my teachers. Like, why are you forcing us to, comment every line? That's not true. Like
nobody does that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, it's because you're in college. We're forcing you to do it so that you get used to doing comments, basically. Yeah. But he would actually check the grammar in the comments. If
I remember that.
Yeah, if you forgot to put, a dot or whatever, he would take out some points.
What?
Or like if you forgot to put like an article. So like, if you was like to do like, I don't know, if you write like this is function instead of like this is a function.
Isn't a qualification of programming having poor grammar and poor use of words?
I would think that. That's why I'm not a must. That's why I'm not an author. Actually, I am an author. That's why you're not an author.
Little flex there.
Yeah, actually, I am. Whatever, but yeah, like that's why I'm not an English major. That's why I'm a programmer. Like
it was really weird. Even if the first time I got it, I was complaining to the teacher, and then he was like, "We see here, you forgot A. You should have put A here." I was like, "Oh, okay."
No, that seems like a waste of time.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, but
of course, here was something controversial that I would do. Is I would grade them down if they didn't name the files correctly.
Oh yeah.
But the reason I would do that is because, and I would tell them right at the start, I go, I have a script that's going to fetch all of your zip files, like, because we had a website. It's going to fetch all of those, unzip everything, pull it out into separate folders, and it's going to compile and run, and I'm going to run these tests. So I'm writing a program to test your program. If you've named files incorrectly, it's not going to work.
Based on what you've asked them.
Yeah, based on what I'm...
Yeah, fine.
Because, like, I mean, and then I eventually, I lightened it up a little bit.
Well, what was the penalty? Was it like, I don't I won't grade this whole file, or was it like you just lose 5 points or something like that?
No, if it wouldn't compile, it wouldn't compile, and so they wouldn't get any points.
So it's like a pass or fail kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But like I said,
that's brutal.
It was, but because they would say, well, that's pretty stupid that I lost all those points for not naming this correctly, and I say that is pretty stupid.
Yeah.
I go because I told you, but I did lighten it up. Sorry to all the students who lost points and didn't get it back, but like in some of the later years, I would say, okay, that was a dumb mistake, but if you resubmit it, you can get up to 70% or whatever, right? And
so kind of you.
Don't name stuff incorrect. I mean, it's
that's
just
fair. I mean, I would say like not following simple instructions as an engineer, that is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Like if you have instructions, you got to follow them.
Because like imagine if you start naming stuff incorrectly in your database, or like you're expecting something in the database and you name something. Obviously, as a QA, you would figure that stuff out beforehand. But like, let's say you submit something to the App Store and you're like, oh, whoops, it was not a file name, but it was like this database column thing that I'm messing up, and I forgot to test it.
Yeah.
So,
anyway, going back to the question you asked me.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, we're like way off that.
So there were 3 reasons that I moved from like web development to iOS. The first reason was just web development in general is not how can I say it? It's messy. Like right now, if someone asks you which front end framework should I learn for web development, it would be like Vue, and he would say React. The other guy would say whatever.
Yeah, and it's more like what camp that person is in.
Yeah, so it's so messy. Like it has so many things to learn. It's like really messy. It's like it's very hard to keep up and follow, especially when you're junior. If you're already dev, it's easy like to pick up another framework. It's super easy, right? If you know Vue, you can pick up React, or if you know React, you can pick up. But if you're new and you're trying to get a job or trying to get to start actually working, it's very hard to actually know what to learn in the web development world, right? Yeah. And there's also like PHP, and now you can use Python for backend, and now you can use Node, you can even use C#, you can even use Java. Like it's like everywhere, right?
Yeah.
The second reason was that at our current company, they were talking about hiring new iOS devs.
Yeah.
And that seemed like a good opportunity. I don't know if you guys remember, but we were in a meeting and you guys told me.
Oh yeah, I remember that. We didn't just tell you. We pushed you and said, why wouldn't you do this thing?
You guys we are looking for a new dev. You are here. You already know programming. It wouldn't be hard to pick up Swift, so why not?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, this is a good point because we talk about this a lot on the podcast. Like, I feel like one problem is that a lot of junior developers, they have this idea in their mind of like where I'm gonna go, and you really need to just follow the doors that are open to you. If it makes sense for you to be an iOS developer, ditch everything that you've got going on and pursue that, because the problem is you can continue to pursue this one framework that you know, but it's not guaranteed that you're going to find a job there. It's not guaranteed that some opportunity will be available to you. But if you know there's an opportunity over here, move.
Yeah.
Plus, these skills translate. Like, if you want to be a web developer later, there's no way that your skills as an iOS developer are meaningless. They're absolutely not.
Yeah, and I had the same mindset. Like, I didn't want to change because I spent like 2 years learning web development, JavaScript, Vue, Laravel.
And you had kind of said that you felt like all of that would have been for nothing, but you know that's not true.
Yeah, now I know.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was like, okay, so I'm gonna stop everything I've been learning for the last 2 years and pick up a new language.
Because we were learning Laravel at the same time, basically. We were both going through the Laracast courses.
Yeah.
Like we get it for free at work.
Yeah.
So we were both going through it and talking about it a lot.
Yeah, and I web develop, like a junior web development position was like at the top of my my fingers. Like I was almost going to get it, but
At our current job?
Okay.
But it wasn't like it was gonna be something like, I don't know, 4 months, 5 months from like, yeah. But the potential was there. All the senior devs were already like, I showed them like my projects, the web apps, and they were like, oh, this is really good.
Nobody said that.
They did. They did.
They did.
Actually, one of them, he said, I showed him. Do you remember a web app I had about GitHub?
Yeah.
Which one? You showed me a bunch.
So I had this web app that would use GitHub API.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, so it was like
search or whatever.
Yeah, so like, dude, you have been interviewing a lot of people, and I know it's a pain to go through GitHub. So I made this web app for you to just put in the name and get all the data and stuff like without like searching. And he looked at it and was like, "Oh, that's really good. If you showed me this in an interview, I'll give you a junior dev job."
So give it to me now.
So I was like, "Oh yeah," and then, but so then but even though I was like, I'm gonna be a web dev, I knew it was like super messy, like in the web dev world. Mm-hmm. I knew it was just I did like JavaScript for sure, but like the rest of the rest of the stuff of the web dev was just. It was too much, but I was able, like I was like, I'm gonna keep up with it. I'm gonna get good at Vue, Laravel, and then everything else will be easier to pick up. But then that opportunity came up, and so Cole told me like you should learn iOS, and he has been helping me out, for like 2 years.
Yeah.
All his advices has been good, so why not pick up this one too? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try. Swift and see.
I mean, you're doing it right now, right? Like not behind the scenes. It's like we're all part of the same team.
Yeah.
How long have you been working on you've been giving them tickets or whatever, like having them work on little features for our current app?
I did.
So like you've been doing it.
A few, yeah.
Yeah, there's been a couple.
It's funny because, anyways, Cole. So the first thing Cole told me in Swift, he shouldn't have done that. Because
wait, what I tell you?
The first thing he told me was delegates and protocols.
Yeah. Because it's I understand why, because he talks about it a lot, because it is super important. Like
so fundamental to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get how that could be.
But I didn't know how to declare available in Swift, so I was like, okay. But he wasn't teaching me like to understand it. He was like just like.
This is the thing you're gonna see. You're gonna see this.
Yeah, he was like, does this make sense to you? And I was like, yeah. And then, after that, I went home, looked at Swift syntax, and it was like, oh, that's like, when did I show you an app? Like after like 2-3 days? I don't remember. It was super quick.
Oh, the little, what was it? Like a little card flipper game or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been going through the like Reddit, like there's this Reddit that talk about iOS and stuff, and there was like someone asked a question about how long did it take you from starting Swift to creating an app, and most people are like 6 months, 8 months, whatever, and I'm like, I think it took me like 3 days, but not because I'm good, just because I feel like it's better to learn by creating something. Like I feel like those people who took 6 months, they just were like learning the actual thing, like string and stuff like that, instead of like just creating an app.
They're learning about programming.
Yeah, instead of like creating an app and then learn what you need to learn.
I was the same way, actually, with both Kotlin and Swift. The first time I touched Swift was because I was working at a company. It was at first company in Las Vegas that I worked for. I got hired as an Android dev, and they needed an iPhone app as well, right? And so I knew I didn't want to do Objective-C again, so I already knew that. And so I just started writing it. I was like, oh, let's just pick Swift. Yeah. I just started going, and that is end up what I did with Kotlin at this current job as well.
Yeah, and that was also a little bit hard for me, because before, I know you used to tell me like, just do a project. Before I used to do like tutorials, like I would do tutorials for like 3 months before I actually start like thinking about an idea and start working on it. So when moving to Swift, I just went with like, start with a project, and then
you found that, I mean, and that worked better for you.
Yeah,
because you say you like that better as well, right?
I have to do it that way.
Yeah.
Like I have to just start building. I have a vision for what kind of app I want to make, and I just have to start finding all the problems and just kind of getting through them or whatever.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
Swift is complicated because all of the little intricacy. Like, I guess we've talked about this before. Like, it's not that being a JavaScript developer is easier than being an iOS developer. It's just, I was telling Matt that I think the barrier to entry is low because you can just start writing crappy JavaScript like that, and there's nothing stopping you from doing it. But I feel like with Swift, the barrier to entry for your first app is tough because there's so many things that you're not used to in something like JavaScript when you come to Swift, like even just types and class. I mean, I just feel like with JavaScript just being a regular scripting language, you don't have to like obey all of the constructs and design patterns. But with Swift you do. So I don't know. It can be tough. But I mean, so what do you think was the reason why? Because there's so many developers that do start out with JavaScript and web development. What's the draw there? Like, why were you so afraid to like leave that little nest and break out into Swift?
I didn't start with JavaScript. Like I said, I didn't even know JavaScript existed.
So what did you think? You said like, okay, I want to do programming. What was it that you imagined yourself doing?
I just thought I'm gonna do programming. At that time I didn't know the difference. I didn't know there's web development, there's Swift, there's Android. Like,
at what point were you thinking this? Was this after 2 years of
No,
college?
it was before before college.
Okay.
So, but what was? So you said like I want to be a programmer, but what does that mean? What does that look like in your head? Like, what do you want to do?
I really didn't have a good idea. I knew I wanted to.
So why
write
programming?
code.
You want to make money?
Yeah.
Is that really?
I didn't think about money, but at that time I was like, I don't know. I don't remember, maybe 17 or something.
This is a good question because I'm curious.
So yeah, so what's the draw there? Like if it's not money and it's not.
And you had no idea what programmers
Had you
did.
just seen a movie of like code
Hackers.
and you're
He
like,
watched
that's what I
Hackers.
want to
I
do?
didn't
Or?
even seen the
He watched
movies.
Angelina Jolie and Hackers, and he
Yeah.
was like, "I want to be a programmer."
I'm trying to remember what made me choose programming. I really don't remember. I just remember myself googling how to be a programmer and stuff like that.
Was this in Rwanda?
No, it was here.
It was, okay.
Yeah.
And you were how old at this point?
I think I was like maybe 18, 19, right there.
So you lived here. I guess I didn't know this. You lived here in America before you decided to go to college to be a programmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I didn't know about the programming or whatever in high school in Rwanda.
Okay.
I didn't know about that, and I also I knew that so at that time I knew the language like C, C++. Like I knew those are programming languages.
Okay.
And also I knew a little bit about I don't want to say algorithm. It was like flow chart thing. Like we had the class in Rwanda where they'll teach you like flow chart, like how can I say? It's like
Microsoft Visio, like those with like the squares and the diamonds and.
Yeah, it was like that, but it had like logics in it, right? It was like, that square thing. This is a logic thing, and if you put this arrow here, I think that actually really helped me understanding like if conditions, like stuff like that. Because when I was in high school, like we had the class. I don't remember the name of the class, but it was basically teaching you about like logic. I don't know if you can call it logic class or something.
Yeah.
But it would be like they would use all those squares and stuff like that, and then they would go with arrows until the end.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started in Rwanda, I didn't even Google. Like I didn't even Google. Like I didn't know you could even Google programming. If I knew, I would have studied in Rwanda for sure. Because at that time I already knew like C programming and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But anyways, I Googled C programming here, and I saw it and then I started learning. I don't remember exactly the specific reason.
That seems tough.
C programming.
How did you compile it?
Oh, so that tutorial, that website had everything. Like I downloaded this program called, I think it's called Xcode. No, it's not Xcode. It's
Visual Studio.
No. Turbo.
Turbo. Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's like
Turbo. Yeah. I know. What is that called?
I don't remember the name.
Is it just called Turbo C++?
I think so.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
We used to build tools for our game engines in like using that.
Yeah, so that's the thing I used. That's what the website was using.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't even
Borland
know.
And used the Borland compiler.
Yeah, at that time I didn't even know you could use C++, like C for many like I thought you could just write like
console applications.
Yeah. I didn't at the time I didn't know anything, and then I went to college and then that's when I started figuring out like, oh, this is web. There is desktop apps.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
is
yeah.
mobile apps. There is all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then around that time, like after like a year and a half, something like or a year, that's when I joined your company, and then you was there doing web development. So you started talking about JavaScript, Vue, and all that stuff.
Getting you all excited about that.
And I was like, oh, JavaScript. So I go home, the Google JavaScript, start learning JavaScript.
So Patrick makes fun of me because he says whatever you're working on at the time is like the best thing. Like it's like you don't want to do anything but the thing that you're doing right now, and you're gonna try to convince everybody to do it.
Yeah, he is telling like JavaScript is the best language.
You do iOS right now, and you have along with me, we have a YouTube channel where we're trying to convince people
iOS.
to do iOS. So he's not wrong.
wait! He finds another language. This he's gonna just create another channel.
I don't know. Like apps are just so cool because I feel like there's a huge demand for them. It pays pretty well. I mean, compared to all of the other things that you could do, it's really rewarding because you get to like have something that the user works directly with. And in my opinion, this is gonna not come off right. There's gonna be people that don't like that I said this, but I just feel like the architecture of a mobile app is so much more rewarding than a web app, because with web apps, like I just feel like they're constantly changing how you write them. Like Angular, for example, like from one version to the next, it's like, okay, scrap everything that you knew. This is completely different.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that I haven't been following Angular that much. That was 100% true with Angular 1 to Angular 2.
That's what I mean.
But I think they've been smaller changes, but there has been some like deprecated stuff.
I guess like web developers have this like obsession with like coming out with a new framework daily.
People talk about that all the time. Yeah.
Daily. And I feel like the web development community is also just like savage on each other. Like anytime I jump into like some Stack Overflow post or something, I just feel like they're being nasty to each other and just like debating to the end. I just feel like with mobile development, it's just not as much like that. There's definitely still like snobby developers or whatever, but I don't know. It's just like it's really fun, and it gives you a chance to really learn what you're capable of. And I feel like a lot of the skills in mobile development translate to other places as well. So I don't know. And you get the best of everything. Like you get to work with the front end. You get to work with databases if you decide to do so. You get to work with APIs. You get to work with payments. You get to work with everything. I don't know. That's my thoughts. Yeah. But
I also feel like it's really cool to have especially like having apps like literally the first few weeks when I started, I just paid for the app, the developer program, and then I just released like a lame joke app, like jokes, like daddy jokes.
Fun, yeah.
That's cool, yeah.
But like even going through that process and getting reviewed and then accepted, like that gave me like some confidence. Like,
yeah.
Actually, someone reviewed this code, and then I mean they don't look at the code probably, but like someone accepted this, so like it felt good,
Yeah.
I released my little game, and it took me like a month to develop, and it's got over 50,000 downloads.
That's
that
awesome.
feels so
That's
cool.
awesome.
It's really rewarding. I don't know.
As far as the website, like I mean, it's also probably good to like set up your servers and stuff like that for your website. But there are many services you can just use without knowing how to do. Like without having the fun of setting up like your server and stuff like that.
Because I didn't know how to do that until I met him. And now I've only done it like manual style, and then he was telling me there's like Heroku and stuff that will just like run it for. Yeah, and like I just get on the server and try to figure it out, and then I wrote some cool scripts that like automate some of that.
I think that's cool that you did that. That's what I did, and I thought that was super fun. Actually, I didn't really know much about that until Simon kind of showed me, and that I don't know. I just thought that was so cool to be apps and websites. I will say that's cool about both of them is like you get to build this piece of technology and just put it out there for the world.
That's it. Yeah,
anybody can see it, and that's so cool.
Yeah.
It was That's basically why I chose iOS. It was
so I have another question. Okay, so you got hired at the first company with him, and how long did you work there? You left first, right?
Yeah, I was just
Yeah, and
sick of the owner.
you've told that story. Why did you leave that company?
I
And you were doing QA the whole time there.
I was doing QA. So I started doing just manual QA. And by the end, I was also doing automation QA using Java.
Okay.
So the reason why I left because there was like core wasn't like the people were
A bunch of people left.
Yeah,
right?
left.
Did you leave and then after you had quit, I reached out to you, or did you leave because I reached out to you?
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question.
No, I think no. So we didn't like you told me, oh, dude, this current company is really good. It'll be happy to have you here or whatever. But at the time, I don't think they were even looking for anyone. You just told me how good the current company
I was pretty
is.
sure I could get you a job though.
So I had that in mind, but by the time I left, like we didn't talk about getting me hired or whatever, anything. I just I left because there was basically I wasn't. It's funny there was no devs, right?
Yeah.
So
how did that work in the end?
so all devs left, and then they hired a dev team in another company.
Was it Romania?
In another country, yeah, Romania.
Yeah.
So I was pretty much alone most of the time in the office because yeah.
And didn't they hire some like super jerk QA guy that they put above you? And
they had actually 4 QAs, I think, if I remember correctly.
they needed it because their technology was trash.
Yeah. So that guy, I didn't even think we had like a team leads or anything, but so that other part of QA was also in Romania. So they were with the devs.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was here alone.
Yeah,
So.
Can you back me up and just say how much of a jerk the guy was that was in charge?
I would say 2 things. He was not a good boss for sure.
He was not a good person.
Yeah, he was also not a good person. But
He wasn't. Dude.
I will give him a credit for one thing though. When I started, I was still going to school,
Mm-hmm.
and he let me like every Wednesday and Friday. I would just work until 12 and then go to school in the afternoon.
That's cool.
So
I don't think that was because he was all that nice. I just think that was because he was like, well, I can't get any other QA guy for $12 an hour. So sure, you can leave a little early. It's fine.
Because we're massively underpaying you already, so we'll give you some of your time back.
Dude, this was the kind of guy that you would be like, I'm not kidding. When I talk about how cheap he was, I mean, like, we would say, hey, I don't know, for example, I think at one point we wanted to, like, do, we were going to, like, cache all of the images and everything on our server. And actually, what was it that we were, I don't know. Anyways, it involved caching a bunch of images, and there was, like, some API that you could pay, like, $80 a year for or something. And he was like, well, we have a team of people. Can we not just have somebody, like, go manually do? You're like, are you kidding me? It's $80.
I mean, that just seems short-sighted because...
This guy was unreal.
Yeah, because it's going to cost... If you keep doing that, it's going to cost... Like, how many hours if you're making $12 an hour?
He didn't look at it like that, though. This guy looked at it as, like, these are my business expenses. I pay these people anyways. And I think he legitimately thought nobody did anything.
Yeah.
Like, because he would always say that. Like, he would always question, like, whether or not people are actually working. So he just wanted to give somebody something to do. And, these guys are free because I already pay them.
Yeah.
Stupid way of looking at it.
It is, yeah.
He just wouldn't invest in any tools, and like, I don't know. I would go on and on about him all day. But
I remember him having problems with one of the backend guys because our backend couldn't handle, like our servers couldn't handle the traffic.
I remember that
on the apps. So the backend guy would tell him like, we need to spin up new servers to support the the traffic. And he would not do that. But then the app would just crash.
Yeah. All right. Like,
remember HipChat?
HipChat? Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
Is that one of the apps or websites you guys made?
No, actually Atlassian made it. The company that does Jira
and stuff like that. Yeah.
They had this awful little program called HipChat, and it's basically a Slack alternative, but I say that loosely. Like, it's terrible. It all it does is emojis and tech. Like, you can't format code. You can't do anything like that. You can't send large attachments and stuff like that. And this guy was like, no, we're not getting Slack. Like, we are staying on HipChat. Yeah. He let the developers use Slack, but like when I first started there, I wasn't technically even on the dev team. And so like he was like, no, you're using HipChat. I don't even know why I'm saying it, but it was just like this guy was just so stupidly unreasonable.
Micromanaging who's using Slack versus HipChat.
This guy was awful. And he used to do this thing where like he'd wear this button shirt and he'd like only button one button. His whole gut would hang out the bottom and his oh my god, it was.
We had a guy like that. Yeah. Okay, so you were deciding to quit this other company, but you haven't gotten hired at our current company. Why didn't you go try to get a dev job, or did you try to get a dev job?
I did try. Okay. Yeah, I applied for. Actually, when I came to the interview at the current company, I was coming from another interview. Do you remember when I told you?
Was that the one, the gun shop or whatever? Yeah.
So
what was it?
Tell the story about how he was like, "Oh, this is good. This is good."
I went to this gun store shop. They had like a WordPress or something for their website. So I went to them.
WordPress, is that what you said?
I think
WordPress?
it was a WordPress or something.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I didn't. They gave me a test in PHP, even though like they asked me before, like, do you know PHP? I was like, no, I don't know PHP, but I can learn.
Yeah.
So
I said I can learn, not that I learned.
Yeah. When I went, they gave me like a question in PHP, but they didn't tell me to code. They just told me what's going to be the output. So it was going through like some numbers or whatever, and I could follow the like, you know, like whatever it's going on. And then I told him, and he was happy. And then he showed me a slideshow on the website, and he was like, okay, so how can you achieve that? How can you achieve this? I was like, it depends. We can probably use CSS and JavaScript on this. I was like, oh, okay, that's good. So he was happy. But I think what made me...
You could use some style, or you could use a programming language.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
You could write some code.
You probably write some code and get that.
Because I was like... Because he was also telling me, like, there was this weird... so it was a slideshow, but it was hanging, like, half of the way. Mm-hmm. Like, the image was, like 20% of the image wasn't, like, in the view. So I told him, I probably need to add some JavaScript here to just make sure the whole thing is in the view. But like I have to look at the code to know exactly like how are you doing this slideshow, so I can tell you. But the deal breaker was it was a gun store. So here they asked me, "Do you like guns?" I was like, "Yeah, I love guns."
Sure.
And then he asked me like, "Okay, what kind of guns do you have, or what kind of gun do you own?" But I don't know anything about guns, right? So I was like, AK-47.
Just be honest. If I could go back and tell you, just be honest. Be like, I like guns. I'm interested in guns. I don't own any guns. AK-47.
Like, I think they asked me like, what type of guns do you know, or something like that.
Okay,
so. Yeah. And I mean, AK-47, that's like the known gun.
Universal, so like,
AK-47. And then I think that's why they probably didn't get a job, because they said, this guy probably doesn't know, he's probably against guns or whatever, which I'm not, like, I don't care. But, so yeah, after that, I went to the current company and had an interview. But yeah, I was trying to get a dev. Even when you left, I stayed doing the stuff you was doing. Not like exactly like all the things.
The programming stuff I was doing?
Yeah.
So you were a dev at that other job?
Not at it's like not a dev because
were you developing features?
Yeah, were you writing code?
Were you writing code?
HTML. So is that code?
Okay, fair enough. All right.
So you remember we had like this web page that every new app should have the profile, whatever.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that's the thing I was doing for every new app. I'd like to do some HTML and stuff. So with that, I and a little bit JavaScript and stuff. So I was like, probably I'm ready to, jump into dev world. So I did go to interviews for dev. But when I came to the kind of company, I told, the senior dev, like, I really want to be a dev, Yes, you can hire me as a QA, but like after a year or something, I have to be a dev. Like, yeah.
You said that here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told him, and he was like, yeah, just learn. And
one of the things I really like about our current company is the fact that we get a chance to learn that. Because I've never done backend before. I kind of did at my first company, but I'd never done Laravel and PHP before. So I also just started learning. And every now and then they'd throw a feature my way. Like it was usually something that was like negatively affecting Android app or something. So I try to figure that out.
I was actually happy when they offered me to learn like Laravel and stuff like that. Usually, like other QA teams, like if there is a learning for devs, like the QA don't get it. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, why do we need to learn Laravel? You're a QA. You know what I mean? It's like so, but it was really good for me to learn it.
Yeah.
Which opened, my eyes and yeah. So yeah.
How did that? Whenever you interviewed here, how did that interview go? Like, did you feel intimidated at all, or?
So the first interview, I was like a little bit worried because like you already told me like, oh, these guys are really good, and as well, like they're gonna. Like,
was I right?
What?
Was I right?
Yeah, he was right. Like,
Yeah.
We have a really good team for sure, like a very good team. And the fact, especially for like a junior dev, like I literally feel like a junior dev should like work in our team for sure because it's super super supportive, for like junior devs.
Yeah.
And yeah, if
Well, that's only because we don't have too many of them. Like that's
Yeah,
the hard
probably.
part. It's hard to have too many.
Hold on, can I completely sidetrack you
Yeah.
real quick? We talked about this in the last episode, and I'm curious what you think about it since we're kind of talking about it. He saw a guy on Twitter say companies should hire more junior devs. What do you think about that?
Sure, why not?
Because they're paying to teach you.
Like
Is that
should they? Like,
that-
do they
is
have
that
an
their-
obligation?
Is that
I
their
mean,
responsibility?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not their responsibility. Like, you can do whatever you want with your business. Like,
My thing was, I said that I think companies, not that they should, as in they have like an obligation to, but I think they should because I think it might be good for them. Kind of like what you're saying. Like if we had more junior devs, we could make great use of them. Like we have plenty of work for them to do that would take kind of the grunt work off of the senior developers.
yeah,
that are,
and it's not like they're paying them to teach them, as if like it's like. No, it's not like that because okay, you have a junior dev, right? You prepare him for let's say 5 months, right? After that 5 months, the money you pay him will be different. Like the money you pay, like a median dev, will be much higher than like the junior dev you had for 5 months, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because usually when the company, give you more money, it's like either 10% or 20% of what you was making before.
Yeah.
Which is different from hiring a new person outside.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that companies shouldn't hire junior devs. The whole thing that I was saying was like based on what this guy was saying. Again, we don't know what his true motivation was, but it just seemed like I thought his motivation was selfish, saying like companies should spend money to help me learn how to do this because it's beneficial to me. And our conclusion, if that was the case, was try to become more beneficial to the company. Yeah, work for less and try to do more work and like sell yourself as, which it sounds like you did very much. Sell yourself as somebody who can get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, like a company is in a business to make money.
They're not a charity.
They're not there to teach you how to code.
But but it is. I mean, like it is kind of like what you're saying. If you can get a junior dev to do work and grow their skill to that of like a mid-level person, if they're doing some of those jobs, then after a long enough time, you're saving money. So it is actually saving the company money. But you also have to balance the fact of a senior dev or somebody else is also watching that junior dev to a certain extent.
So
Yeah,
would you consider yourself right now? Are you a junior iOS developer?
Yeah, super junior.
So okay, so how do you see this from the company's perspective for you? So like obviously it's going to take some time from me to kind of help get you acquainted with everything, get you kind of rolling. Like what are you going to do as a junior developer to make sure that you remain like net positive for the company?
So the first thing would be like, even though you'll be helping me, right? But I'll also be contributing to the app, right? So let's say simple buttons or whatever bugs you are spending time on, I'll be taking those, right? I don't know how much you make, but let's say I make half what you make. So let's say instead of spending instead of the company spending let's say $100 fixing this button, they can spend $50 fixing this button.
Yeah,
That's the first thing. The second thing is after I get good and now I don't need you as much, then that's even more beneficial. Because,
yeah.
Because for them, let's say down 6 months, I'm good, right? For them to hire another person in 6 months, like hire like a completely new person, but who is not a junior dev, right? That person would charge them a lot of money than what I would charge them after 6 months.
There's another big benefit because we hired him like in-house is the fact that you've been working here almost 2 years, right? I guess like a year and a half. It sounds like because we got hired the same month.
Yeah.
You know our system.
Yeah.
You know our app because you did like the QA. So even though you're hired as now like a junior iOS dev, it's not the same ramp up as if we hired a brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you'll have zero questions about how the technology works.
Yeah, you know about our product. You know about the app.
Yeah, and
you know the bugs that currently exist in the app.
Exactly. And I'm also like familiar with the culture too. Like,
it's
very hard to find. You can find a good iOS dev, but if they're not gonna fit in, then you're gonna hire, fire, and that's money you're spending. Right?
And you've definitely proven yourself. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So you, for those that don't know you, are extremely critical of code written by other people. You have no problem pointing out all the flaws that you find. Of course, that's okay. That's your job. But with you having a background in QA, like I'll say, I don't have a background in QA at all. I kind of just got fortunate to roll right into it from whatever I was doing before. So I've never been in a QA job. I'm very familiar with what you guys do and how it works and whatever, but I've never done it for any length of time. So now that you are going to be working as a dev or junior dev or whatever, how do you think that affects you? Like the fact that you've been doing QA, do you think that makes you more critical of yourself, or like is it going to change the way that you approach features or anything like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. For first thing is I would probably never
write a bug.
No,
Never.
I probably never send a feature or a fix to the QA team without checking actually if it's working. Because
okay, do you think we do that?
some people do. Yeah. To be honest, dude, it's like sometimes I see something, I'm like,
that was obvious.
yeah, like you didn't even run the app,
yeah.
dude. It's like, yeah. But yeah, so that's the first thing. The other thing is, and it's probably not good. I think it's gonna probably slow me. Like I have this habit. I don't know if it's because I'm a junior or whatever, but I tend to run the app, like the build, like
often.
so many times.
Yeah.
So
that
many
will
times,
change.
Like so many times, like checking if I add the button, did it go right? And then I run to
Yeah,
check if it
yeah.
went right, and then I come. Yeah. So I feel like that. I don't know if that's for like, if it's because I was QA or if it's like for everyone. I don't know. But I think it probably make me a good developer for sure.
One thing really frustrating about native iOS development versus like React Native, Android kind of has something a little bit like this, is that there's no concept of like an instant update or instant build. So like you can't like you don't have to recompile because a lot of it's like cached or whatever, but like it still takes a minute to restart and then you got to go back to the beginning of the app. Whereas like with React Native and Android to some extent, you could just kind of do like a hot update.
That feature's super buggy. And so
Yeah,
like,
I
like a
know.
lot of people tell people just to disable
Yeah,
it.
and it's probably not going to have the exact behavior that
Yeah.
you'd expect it to. But anyways, yeah, that will change though for sure because I feel like I was the same way. But eventually you get to the point where I don't know. It's like you've got like a bigger buffer in your head of like the things that you've done over the last 30 minutes, I think, because you just become more comfortable with them. So you can sit there and write 20 minutes worth of code and like, okay, now I'm going to run it. I see some flaws. I know what was going on. I can just kind of like remember all of that. But when you first start, it's like your bandwidth for like memory is really low. You're just like, oh, what could have caused that? What happened here? Whatever. So
yeah, I can feel that for sure.
I think it also has a lot to do with your debugging skills. Like I think a lot of junior developers think, well, when I get better at programming, that will help with that. And it's like kind of, but really your debugging skills are what allow you to do that. Because now I can write 30 minutes worth of code, and I'm not really concerned about finding where the problem was at because my debugging skills have gotten a whole lot better.
Yeah. But also, I think when I be like developing features or something, I'll also be thinking about edge cases and stuff like that because that's I've been thinking about edge cases for like the last 2 years and stuff like that. Yeah. So I'll be thinking about those a lot for sure when I'm going, and I feel like I hope not, but I feel like it might make me like slow in a way.
Yeah, there's going to have to be some balance there because sometimes one of the hardest parts about being a programmer is identifying when it's not worth the drastic amount of more effort to deal with some really low edge case. Like sometimes it's better to say like if that's going to take me 40% of the time to develop this feature for this one edge case. We've done it. We've chased rabbit holes before and like, we look back and we're just like we just spent 8 hours on just handling this really obscure edge case that's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to find a way to balance that. But I think the best way to deal with that is to constantly just have conversations with other developers. Talking to me, talking to Matt's going to help a lot because then you can, I don't know, like, because you've got the QA perspective, which is good, but there's also like a matter of talking to other people to get the business requirements, making sure that that's something that's actually going to be beneficial for the business, but also to make sure that like you're not missing something or missing some easy fix. I know that we hired he didn't call himself a junior developer, but he absolutely was. We hired one before, and this guy just went crazy handling like little obscure cases. And when you actually break down his code, you're like, there's actually a really easy way to handle that. Like maybe you just over-engineered the problem. Actually, that might be a bigger deal for you than I'm curious to see how this plays out. I'm really excited about you doing this because like I want to see how this all goes. But over-engineering tends to be a problem of junior developers, right? Wouldn't you say so? Like that was definitely a problem for me and a problem for this guy where like you'll take a problem and you'll overcomplicate it and you'll end up writing 800 lines of code to solve a problem that if just engineered differently could have been done in 100 lines of code.
Yeah. I've been trying to to do that. And I always remember like there's this one day that I wrote some messed up code and I mean it was working but it was like everywhere, right? And then you came and you look at it and it was like, and you said like you don't even remember this, but I always bring it up because like if you're writing too hard code, you're probably doing it wrong.
Right.
And I always like remember that most of the time. It's like
that's good.
If I'm stuck on a problem, like if I'm stuck for like a while, and then I remember, I'm probably doing this wrong. Yeah. Probably like. Yeah.
You know, one thing I would recommend if you get in that situation, I talked to Matt about this a little bit the other day, and I think I'm going to try to start doing it more. I find that when I'm dealing with a really complicated problem, a lot of times talking out loud to Matt will help me identify like where I'm overthinking it or where I'm over-engineering it. And if you don't even have somebody to talk to, I kind of think it might be a good idea just to write up like a README on that feature and like explain your logic, like write it out in words because that's going to really force you to break down each part of the problem and then maybe find an easier way to do it. I don't know if there's like any other ways to deal with that, but I know that that's all too common with junior developers is to like way over engineer problems. So
well, at MIT they have, or at least this was like the famous story. They had like a mannequin in like the corner of like the the lab rooms, and they would say like before you go and talk with a professor, go and tell the mannequin your problem. And like we got that somebody, one of the students bought one, and like for like it was like the junior class, we had our own lab, and like they bought one and they put it in the corner and they dressed it up, and I don't think people talked to the mannequin that much, but it was just like it was always like a reminder of that. Like but the idea is, because like it has happened to you a lot, it's happened to me, where I'll go and I'll just start explaining my problem to you, and I'll go, oh yeah. Like
that's why I think this is like a controversial interview practice, but I think it's a good one if you really want to know somebody's brain. A lot of times for programmers, they won't even ask you to write code. What they'll do is they'll give you a problem. Like there's the one where they say like you've got what is it? Like you got like a wolf, a chicken, and a bag of rice, and this one can touch it, and you got to get them over to this side. How do you do that without the wolf eating the chicken or the chicken eating the rice?
Yeah. You can't leave some of the things alone.
Right.
Yeah.
And like that's really good because then you get to see how this person solves problems and make sure that they're not like way overthinking it, because again, that's half the battle. I like to think I think we talked about this too in the last episode. I even talked to somebody about this today at work. I saw somebody online say once that software engineers, their job is to solve problems. Code is a tool to solve problems, but really this is what solves the problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important. And for junior developers, it's always like, I think they try to simplify it. And they're just like, well, if I was just better at writing code, this would be faster. And it's like, there's so much more to this than that. There's the debugging aspect. It kind of goes back to what I said a couple episodes ago, where I don't like it when people condense complex problems into a simple statement or a simple reason why this is happening. A lot of times these things are complicated. And engineering is just that. It's not just coding.
And I would say for like junior devs, usually is because they like there are some syntax in each language that makes things easier that the junior devs usually don't know.
That's
for example, like in Swift, like if you do like if let or like. And a junior dev who didn't know about that, he probably write like, a bunch of if conditions to like, check if it's null or if it's not null or whatever, instead of just doing one line. Mm-hmm. So like things like that, because junior devs don't know that syntax, then they just, write whatever. And then when you read it, you'll be like, why did they even do this way? Like you can just, I mean, you say that all the time. You're like, why do you even do this way? Just do this.
Just do this thing you didn't know about.
Well, sometimes I think for junior developers, it's also intimidating to learn a new way to do it. Like you're like, I know how to do it this way. I just want to do it this way. But it's like there's really much easier ways to do this. I remember learning in JavaScript like way, way, way early on. Somebody trying to tell me how to use like the for each function with the closure and everything, and I was just like, no. The while loop is fine. Like
I know how to loop.
I know how to loop. I got one. And then I just remember when I finally understood how to write them, I was like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Like this is so much better. But I was like intimidated to learn it.
Yeah.
Loops in general were so hard for me. Did you have a problem with loops when you first started learning? I remember loops just being like, I couldn't understand them. And I noticed that when I teach new developers, a lot of them struggle with loops too. Something about a loop doesn't make sense.
It's actually weird because for me, loops, like all stuff like if conditions and the loops, that like they were not hard at me at all. Like,
oh yeah,
which is like, I'm always like everyone, like most new devs or whatever, they struggle usually with loops and if conditions.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know if it's because like they kind of taught us like if this go this way or if this go this way in the class using flowcharts. Maybe that helped, because usually when I'm looking at things, that's like the lens that I look at. Like this is like flowchart and stuff. But yeah, never heard like and I remember in college, like in the first year of college, I would just sit down in class, like everyone asking like loops, like because also like before that class, I like in the holidays I learned how to write loops, whatever in the language.
Yeah.
And then now everyone is asking about it, and they're taking like an entire hour. It's like, dude.
I don't know if everybody's like me, but it feels like everybody's got like one little thing that they get hung up on. I think it's funny because like loops, for some reason, like the idea of a for loop was just so hard for me. But recursion, I got it. I was like, cool, recursion makes sense to me, like right from the beginning. And most people struggle with recursion. Most people are like, how does this work?
I struggle with recursion.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Now or when you were learning?
Now, probably now too. It depends. It depends on how complicated it is. Like how, yeah.
We don't really use recursion at all in our current project. Do you use recursion at all?
No.
I don't know why we would. But.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I can think about why we might do it is if we were parsing, if we were trying to do something like parsing one of like the view hierarchies and like checking something there. But we're just not like with the stuff we're doing.
I actually do use recursion. That's funny you said that because I do that. I have a thing that finds the topmost view controller and it does use recursion to find which one's at the top.
At one of my like at the first company I worked for, I was working on the front end. And Angular Forms is like also a form of recursion. Like a form has a form, basically like forms all the way down. But it could be like it's all like the base class form, but it could be like a form array or a form object or whatever. And so the original front end dev wrote this like super complicated thing, trying to like figure it out. And I was just staring at it. I was like, I think it could be better. And I shrunk it down to like. It was just like one loop that would call itself. Yeah. And he didn't like it. I think it was like too complicated for him. Yeah. But he just like didn't like it. He's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean like I can like if I needed to use the recursion I can do that. But I never like had code that I needed to use it like, every week or whatever to actually be familiar with it all the time. But yeah.
Yeah, because we're just most of the stuff that we're doing isn't doing that. Yeah. Like it is a tool, just like with a bunch of the other stuff. It's like it's a tool, but like, I don't know. I'd have to look, but I don't think that I'm using it anywhere in my code right now.
So when we have you move over to the iOS app, one of the first things that you're going to be working on is helping kind of re-architect the project from what Matt and I had originally done, which was sort of like MVP style architecture, and we're going to kind of be moving into the MVVM. And I've actually got some examples for you already of what that's going to look like. But I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are on that, because I've been thinking about like what makes sense for you, and that's kind of that might be like a pretty lofty thing to have you do in the beginning. But my thought process is that it's going to help you understand the architecture, which you need to be able to work in the project, and also it's going to expose you to a ton of the code that was already written. So like if you go look at a lot of these controllers, like you're going to remember what was in there because you had to move it around. What are your thoughts? Are you excited about that, or is there something else you'd rather be doing? Like, do you like working with
so for most of my learning I've been using MVC most of the time, except like sometimes I try to follow your code and do like the models and all that, like things like that. But most of the time it's MVC. But I'm excited to look at that too. I mean, it's for me. It's like if it's something that is something to learn, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's a good attitude, really.
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool. I think exposing you this early to a different type of architecture than the plagued architecture of the app community, which is MVC. I don't know if you've heard this, but they call it like massive view controller because that's all that ends up happening.
I hate that. Like, do like sometimes I have another class on the side that I would just call the functions into the control instead of like writing all that stuff. So I use MVC, but maybe I use MVC 70% of the time, and then 30% would just be like, I don't want to put this in the control.
So where do you put it?
So it depends. So let's say I have like some like do you call them base class? Like utility classes basically. Like if I have a function that is not necessarily dedicated to one function thing, I just have like a utility class that has a bunch of functions.
They're like static functions?
Yeah, like that I have like a bunch of functions that I will call in any view controller or whatever. And then I will have some class. So if I have some classes that are actually dedicated to something, like one feature or whatever, and then I just call those the functions in those classes and the variables or whatever, and then just use them in the view controller.
So what I want to do, actually, I don't want to waste a whole bunch of time on the podcast talking about it, but I think because architecture is so important, it would be cool to talk to you and have you talk through your thought process and say, like, this is why I do it this way. This is why I feel like this is clean code, or maybe you don't, who knows, but you could just kind of talk through it and say what you think. I think the reason that we want to go with the MVVM style architecture is because the more research I've done, the more that I realize I think it could help eliminate certain like UI bugs, because the idea is that your UI will be a whole lot more reactive because the view model is communicating like events or like data updates back to the view controller so that it can just always make sure that it's triggering that change. So I'm really excited about that because I feel like it makes it easier for you to not forget to update some label or forget to update this thing or whatever. Yeah. And I also like that I feel like it's a whole lot more testable than what we had. It's definitely more testable than what I had before. But I don't know. I just feel like it makes it easier to write like unit tests, because that's kind of the idea of the view model, is to be able to. Yeah. So I'm really excited about using that architecture, and I'm really excited for you to get a chance to try that out. What are you least excited about?
Let me see. Probably try to think. Maybe some bugs, because I feel like there are some bugs that are super like boring, I guess, to work on. So I mean, I work on them, but I mean,
it does suck, right? Or fixing bugs in someone else's code. I hate that. I do not like doing that. I will try to not do that to you very much. That's kind of
very
cool,
very much.
But I mean,
So except for like fixing some boring bugs, but the rest of the stuff, right? Like feel. Especially like the MVM is like I think it's like one of the popular.
Yeah, it's definitely. It seems like it's grown in popularity a lot. So
I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited.
I think it's a good alternative when you don't have something like a declarative UI like Swift UI or whatever. So, okay. So kind of my last thing, unless Matt has anything else he wants to talk about, my question for you to all of the listeners, we always kind of like to end the podcast by talking to junior developers about like, here's some advice, here's what we would recommend. Matt and I have offered a lot of advice, but the reality is that you're sitting here. That's kind of why we were so excited to have you as a guest, because we can preach all day long, but we want success stories from other people, and you are literally in the middle of one where you should be feeling super excited right now. Like you finally made it to where you want to be, and you've got a long journey to go, but this was a long time coming. So what's your like 60-second piece of advice? What
before he answers that? So I do like that question, but I do have one other question. You briefly touched on this, but I think you could expand it a little bit. How did you make that transition?
From QA to dev?
You didn't talk about. I think I know. Like you talked with our boss, but can you talk about?
Kind of ties into my question, anyway.
Okay, But let's hit this question first, and then give your advice.
It's actually it's not as easy as most people think to move from QA to dev, because usually the hiring managers or hiring people think like, oh, if you're QA. Like especially if you're like an engineer, QA or something, they usually think like, oh, you suck at programming. That's why you went into QA and stuff like that.
Is that a stigma?
Yeah, it's like I mean, anyways, when I was trying to search like how to move from QA to whatever, I saw most people talking about that. But I wasn't worried about it. I was like, I'm just gonna do what I have to do, and if it works. If it doesn't, then doesn't. But my transition was basically learn, right? Learn and then show you guys and show
So you were building apps. Obviously, like we said, you were contacting me, getting some help. You were showing
and me. I came in with not as many times as I wish I would have.
That's right.
I came in with you a lot of mornings to help.
So you were doing this actually for a long time, because that was before.
I mean, he really did do the thing that a lot of junior developers don't do, which is insist on getting help from other developers. You're going to learn so much by talking to these people.
Because I come in just because I don't know what, I come in at 7. I open up the door, or before Corona, I open up the door every day. I come in at like 7 o'clock. But there were days that you were there before me.
Yeah. And before that, I used to just wake up and learn at home.
Yeah.
But then when I found out that he was there all the time, I was like, okay, it's better to be with
Just-
you.
yeah.
So, but what I did most of the time was learning, for
Mhm.
sure, learning, and try to show, the people I know that can help me with the code. So that's pretty much what I did.
So then what was who did you talk with, or who did you have to get signed off with? Was it the VP of engineering, or because it sounds like eventually you also showed some code to like the boss?
Not the boss,
Okay.
but so you know how we have like reviews and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
in every review, I made sure to remind the VP that hey,
okay.
I want to be a dev.
Oh, okay.
I want to be a
Persistence.
dev,
Persistence.
you know?
Yeah. I'm not giving up on this.
Do you think that made a big impact? You being persistent? Is that really what ultimately got you what you wanted? Because you've been pretty clear about it.
Yeah. Because so the reason why you need to be clear is because then everybody know how to help you, right?
Yeah.
If you don't know what I want, how are you gonna help me? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like that's why. So from the first day, like the whole dev team knew that I want to be a dev. Even the senior devs will stop. Help me with something. Even though I'm QA, I'm not working on any feature, but I will ask him a question, and he will stop what he's working on, and he will come and help me, right? So that's what I did. So I kept telling him in every review, hey, I want to be a dev, and things like that. And then in the last 2 months, I think, actually I went to the boss because I did talk to the VP, and he said, okay, I'm ready for you to
Cool.
change. But then after that, I didn't know like the next step.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, the VP agrees. I already talked to you guys, and you were like,
Yeah.
I showed you the apps and stuff, and he was like, yeah, I think you're good. You can join. And then so I was like, so who I got to do next?
Yeah.
Well, because there's another challenge that I would assume that you faced is you're a good QA. Like people like you. I mean, like you, not just in the fact that you find the good bugs. I guess that is the fact. But like you're well known. We're not a huge company, but still, you're well known, and like they'll talk about it. And everyone said we had that one offsite meeting, and everyone's like request was, "We want to clone you. We want to clone you. We want to clone you."
Part of that I think is, I don't remit myself to QA.
Yeah.
So like, the VP will be like, "Oh, can you actually?" He will be like super busy, be like, "Oh, I need to fix this thing. Can you write a query to fix it?"
Yeah.
And then I'll sit down and write, try to come up with the query, and then someone will be like, oh, we are building this new website, and we have this migration that we want to create. Can you write this or whatever? So that's probably why I was like in the eyes of many people, because even the boss you want something.
He knew. Yeah.
He would want something, and then he would send me a Slack.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Because I was the one who was like not so busy compared to the devs. Right?
Okay.
Like every dev is like super slammed. So if there is
you are busy though.
Because like especially for a while, you were the only QA for like our like iOS, Android, and the 2 websites.
Yeah, but like what I'm saying is, some people will be working on like super important stuff.
Yeah.
And I was doing QA. I mean, kind of wait an hour. You know what I mean? So, so that's why I kept receiving a lot of even like integration stuff. Like when I started, like. They were like, "Oh, can you hook up this API?" And I literally have never worked with API.
I don't know what any of those words mean, but I'll do it.
So
I feel like that's part of the journey, though, as a developer. Like, you have to do things that you're clueless about.
It's funny because one day the VP asked me like, "Oh, can you actually?" I think he was like, "Can you mimic this payload?" Like the payload from like Brain 3 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what is a payload? Oh my god, now that I remember, it's so embarrassing. But it took me like 20 minutes to like, should I ask him what a payload is? Because he seems to think that I know what a payload is, and he thinks,
you don't want to let him down.
And he thinks that it's probably easy for me to do.
Yeah.
So
should have studied that vocab.
Yeah.
That was day one.
You know what's funny though, like the fact that you bring that up though, that's so cool because like those are the moments that stick. Like now you know what a payload is.
Yeah.
You never forget what a payload is. Like
It ended up being a little bit harder than like I didn't like he helped me like all through it basically. He did like 70% of it. It was a brain-free payload. Like anyways. But so, and then I talked to the boss. I told him like, so I, need to talk about, my next move. And he was like, oh, okay, but I'm a little busy. Can you talk to the VP? Oh shit! Now
it's a circle. I already talked with him.
I already talked to him. He's like, oh, okay. Then I will talk to him to talk to you. I was like, okay. And then, I had the meeting with VP. But so, even though the VP was on board with me, going into the dev, he has never seen anything I did, right? He just trusted that I because he sees me like in the morning learning and whatever.
I disagree. I think he saw what you did.
Like he
because you worked on the back end frequently.
Yeah, I worked a little bit on the back end as well too, and I don't know if he saw some commits on the iOS app on this super small bugs. I don't know if he saw that, but basically, I also wanted him to see like some of the projects and stuff. Yeah. And I showed him my favorite one, which is the corona tracking one. And he was like, "Oh, that's really cool." And I also did the Motivate Me app you guys made on your channel.
Oh yeah,
cool. Yeah.
How was that?
Actually, that taught me a lot about UI stuff for sure.
Good. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Because most of my UIs are like like as simple as they can be, so that I can just, finish whatever I'm working on.
Yeah.
And that one first, like I saw the thing, I was like, oh, like I saw I watched the end before I watched the tutorial, and I was like, this is interesting. This is like gonna take me like 2 hours, and then it took me like 4 or 6 hours because I was pausing, coming back.
Cool.
And then it told me a little bit about API calls and stuff like that, which I already like knew using Firebase and stuff. So I showed him that as well. I showed him like this is like also a tutorial that I was running, and he was.
Did you tell him that it was my tutorial? I'm just curious.
No, I didn't tell him.
Oh.
I said this is a tutorial.
I just built this by myself.
Yeah, I just built
whatever.
Anyways, he was like, yeah, I'm okay, and then he said he was gonna talk to you, and then
I gave him like a 1-line response. He was like, so what do you think? Are you ready for Pat? Yeah, I was like, I'm super stoked. Like, I cannot wait. This is like the moment I've been waiting for 3 years.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So then what's your little 60-second spiel? Well, actually, real quick, it's worth mentioning that this job pays well because it's hard, and it's been really hard for you to get here too. I think one quality that you have that is super admirable, and any junior developer really needs to take this to heart, is that you are just freaking relentless. Like whether that's in QA trying to get to the bottom of some bug or whatever, or whether that's I just need to learn this new skill. Like you are relentless. You will give it your all. You'll give it everything, and I just think that's really cool. That's something that a lot of people need to take. So you can't steal that answer. Outside of just being relentless, you've done a lot of things right. What's your like 60-second, 2-minute piece of advice for somebody that's like, right now I'm maybe in college, I'm maybe interested in this thing? Like,
they were you like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, when you had no idea. They were you the day before you came into that interview for our last job. Like what advice do you give that person?
So I'd say code, like do project as much. You can do this too, like you can code for like simple stuff, but it's better to actually do a full complete project. Do a project. Like one of the things that I used to have a hard time with was to come up with project. I was like, what kind of app can I do? And then I would spend like a week thinking of an app I can do. instead of
of doing code.
yeah,
Yeah.
just like picking a not whatever. Even if it's a web, don't do a web app. But even if it's a web app,
Don't do a weather app. That's
yeah.
his advice.
I
Do a weather
hate
app.
web
Yeah, why does
apps.
everybody do a to-do and a weather app?
Because it's
What-
easy to think about.
For to do is because they want to they want you to learn like crude thing
Yeah,
create, read, delete and stuff.
yeah.
But for web app, I think it's probably for running API.
Just
or
learning
Probably
API,
pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
but there are many API stuff. Like just Google free APIs and then do something a little bit.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Whether you're not gonna show someone in an interview a weather app. Like they haven't seen like a million of them.
Yeah.
Um,
Shameless plug. That's why that's why we made the course that we have on YouTube, is because like it has a wide variety of applications. Like
Yeah.
we're not just building the same thing over and over again.
yeah.
And one thing we also try to do is get like inspiration from real designers on like Dribble or whatever,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
build
yeah.
something kind of like what they have, so that we can give you a real idea of what it actually looks like to build an app from a designer or whatever. So
Yeah. So yeah, build projects and find people who are best at what you want to become. And if you find people like that and they are willing to help you, then I don't know, like 60-70% of the way is finding people actually who are better than you,
Yeah.
helping you to do that. If you can find someone, then that's where Stack Overflow comes in, and you try to figure it out. But eventually, you have to find someone. Like how there's no way to get better if you don't get feedback from someone who knows what you're trying to do. Whether that is going on Reddit and submit your GitHub and ask for someone to come and look at your code.
Did you ever do that?
No,
Okay.
because I had you
Oh, yeah.
guys.
Yeah,
So,
that's
but that's something I would have done if I was not in a dev team thing. Yeah, I would have done something like that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, because for example, that example I was giving, he saw me doing a bunch of if conditions. He told me just do if let.
Oh yeah.
Like that thing, you would never as a junior dev, you probably not find that. It's so hard to just stumble that thing.
Yeah, that's the hard. Yeah, that is definitely one of the hard parts. Is like how to do something and it's currently working.
Yeah.
And so it's like you don't know, like
The other way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't know if there is a better way without
Yeah.
doing like maybe massive amounts of research because you don't know which direction
Yeah.
to look for. Like, how do I do this thing that I don't know about better?
Yeah.
So that's a hard thing.
Yeah, and it's sure if your if conditions have problem, you will search about if conditions. You not search about something else. For me though, I if I have a bunch of if conditions, then I know something is wrong. Probably be like, oh, how can I do this better? But if you have 2-3 if conditions, you don't think it's bad, because you don't know that. But there is literally one line to do the whole thing. So finding some way to get feedback is really good. And then, stay. Okay, I'm not. You said I shouldn't say that, but focus, dude. Try.
I said you shouldn't focus.
No, you
No,
said
no,
I should
it's
be
don't
persistent.
don't steal your answer. Your answer is
Gotcha.
But yeah. So the first thing you have to do is to be willing to put in time and code. Right?
Yeah.
Doing actual projects, so not just how to print a string
and finish your projects.
And
We
finish
talked
your
about
projects.
that before.
Oh,
That
yeah.
last 10% takes so much effort to
Yeah.
actually do, but
and
it's so much
I
work.
struggled with that, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I struggle with that. Is one of the big. Even now, it's so hard for me to finish a project for sure. It's really hard because I started on project so excited. I can show you. I can show you in my notes. I have projects to make. Right. I have do this app that does this. App that does.
Yeah.
So I'll be working on on an app, and then I get another idea of another app.
That one's so much better.
And then I'm let me just create the folder, the Git, the Git repo, but I'm not gonna work on it. I'm not gonna finish this one. And then once I create the folder, I'm let me just add some UI elements, and then I'm gonna stop there. And then I end up working on that and then forget about the other one, and then halfway I get another one. But I've been trying to finish projects to try at least, like even for the corner app, it looks finished, but I have so much stuff that I wanted to add. And then I went to another app. But at least you have, a
version
that works
0.9 or version 1.0.
Because then you don't want to show your app to a senior dev or whatever and then tell them,
I was gonna add a button here, but there's not even a
I'm
button.
I'm not gonna add it. It's it just doesn't even sound good because the other person is like, why not? Why didn't you add it? It's like So work on your projects. Try to be network basically. That's what I would call it. If you don't have like a community of devs, like maybe your brothers or your dad or whatever, then try to go to meetups, Reddit, whatever you can get people to look at your code and give you advice. And you don't have to take all the advice, but it's actually better to have options of advice to choose from.
That makes sense.
And then
Patrick, this is way more than 60 seconds. No, I'm just kidding. That's all good advice.
It just made me forget the last point.
Oh no!
And then.
Oh man! it just went out of my head. Okay.
Well, maybe this will reinvigorate. This is a question I want to ask you anyways. I don't want to chase this down some long rabbit hole or anything, but just because this is something that we thought we were actually going to talk about this on this episode, and we didn't really get to talk about it at all, which is fine. I really like how this conversation went.
Yeah.
But one thing that guys talk about on Reddit and gals talk about on Reddit all the time is, especially new developers, is they have an issue with like imposter syndrome, feeling like they are a fraud and they're not as good as they really are. I just am curious if that's something that you ever feel and how you overcome that, or if you overcome it at all. Like right now, you're about to start. Is that a problem for you, or do you feel pretty confident going into all of this?
Okay, I just remember what I was going to say.
Okay.
I'm going to say that. And then the other thing is to try as much as you can to get your foot into a tech company.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If you want to be a dev, you have to be like, not even like, let's say the tech company didn't even want to teach you anything, but just being a part of the dev, like just being with the dev, people that would, it would, like, because like I'll give you a good example. Like you don't live in like 2 weeks, right?
That's not true.
I don't know, whatever, 1 month or 2 months, whatever.
It was a week.
But
no, I'm just kidding.
No, you went the other way. It took me 2 days. I learned everything.
But like seeing you learning that really fast, like I saw you studying, I saw you progressing, I saw you like getting, like that is like a motivation for me. That is like an inspiration. Like if it's everyone around you learning stuff, you're not gonna be able to. You're not even gonna be able to sleep.
I'd like to be where they are, and I see that they're studying all the time.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go to the arcade.
Like you're not gonna like.
That's one of the really good things about the company we work for is everybody's like super motivated to keep learning.
Like, there's sometimes I would sleep, like I dream about something and then I would wake up like, dude, I can't even be like even literally. Do sometimes I would wake up like 4:30 and I'm like, no, I'm gonna sleep until 6, but I can't sleep. Like I would close my eyes trying to sleep, but like my head is like,
yep.
This hour you're gonna spend, it should be like you'll be learning something.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, okay,
time to get up.
Yeah, I have to get up because I can't even sleep even if I force myself to sleep.
Yep.
Because I'm just thinking like, oh, you're wasting this hour.
You're not gonna get up. You're a little weak.
Yeah. So, all right. So about imposter syndrome, to be honest, I feel it like now it's real.
Oh.
Because before, most of the time I'm working on my code, right? I'm familiar with my code, even though sometimes I'm afraid to ask a question because I'm like, this is really, it looks easy. I'm not getting it. But you're my friend, so I'm like, either way, I'm just gonna ask you, right?
Yeah.
Which is the imposter syndrome. Most of the time, I feel like when you join a team, you don't know anyone. Like, they are friends at work, but they're not friends.
Yeah.
So you're actually like afraid to ask or afraid to get judged or stuff like that. But I don't feel like that with you, right? So that's why I'm like still asking a question, even though it's a dumb question. But I was looking at the iOS code a few hours ago, and I looked at the ticket you sent me, and I looked at iOS code. I was like, where do I even start with this? Which I'm gonna ask you right after this.
Well, I need to give you some more specific subtasks.
Right after this podcast. But so like today it felt real. Like after they told me you're gonna start. Yeah, that's I opened the iOS code. I looked at it. I was like,
oh no.
Yeah, it's a big project.
Yeah, I mean I can see what this view controller is doing, but like this other stuff like the views, the models, and the delegates, the protocols everywhere. That's like a bit too much, but I know it's like just small bites. When you get there, So, and I'm gonna try to spend as many hours as I can to run. So.
I'm really excited to have you come back on the podcast in a few weeks or maybe a couple months after you've had a chance to get acquainted with it. It's good to say now that you're nervous about it, and that because I'm hoping that 3 months from now you've got this revelation and you can come back and say this is how I dealt with that, this is how I felt. So basically what you're saying though is that it's normal, this is what people deal with, it's okay. I feel like if you didn't feel that way, I would be concerned. Honestly, right? Like, I mean, I think every developer deals with this a little bit. I deal with it sometimes.
We've mentioned this multiple times, but I think there's a good thing. I mean,
it's also a motivator.
Yeah, it's what you said, but then it's what you said right after. You said I do feel imposter syndrome, so I'm gonna learn as much as I can. Yep. And it's that secondary action, like, because if you don't, like you said, if you don't feel that, if you're like, no, this will be easy, right? Now, maybe in 2 weeks you'd realize it wasn't easy, but like if you just think it'll be easy, then you're thinking that there's nothing that to learn. Yeah. I'm worried. We had another person at work, one of the other iOS devs, and that seemed like his attitude, where he like recognized that the code base was more complicated than anything he had seen before, but he didn't recognize that, like, oh, this is a sweet opportunity to learn anything.
Yeah.
And that
I was like, I feel like it might be like an ego thing. If you think, this is so easy, like, then it's probably like when you start coding, even though you're a junior dev, you might start be like, oh no, we should do this way.
If you think
you don't know what.
Yeah. If you think there's nothing you can learn, then you won't.
Yeah, true.
That's it, right?
True. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you for coming on the podcast and talking about this. I mean, I feel like I'm super excited about this episode. I'm super excited about all the future ones with people. This is the start of something really cool where we get to talk to guys like you, and I'm just really excited about it. Thank you for coming on. And as always, check us out on Twitter. Hit us up.
We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube, obviously. Maybe that's where you're checking it out. We're on Apple Podcasts. We have an Instagram. We have a Teespring store.
Yeah, we have so much stuff that we're trying to manage. The Teespring store will go up after we get officially monetized. We're not quite there yet.
Oh, okay.
So. Yeah. Well, I mean, we still have the store. But
we have a Patreon.
Yeah.
Support.
It's all coming together. Anyways, that is episode 13, everybody. And it's just not going to stop. We're just going to keep moving. Thank you for coming on, Patrick.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you come on in the future. So,
absolutely.
Anyways, thanks again, y'all, and we'll see y'all next week.
Peace.